It's another day. Time to clean up and get going. I love it that my sheets are so clean and pristine. Wait a minute. Is it that time of the month again? Oh, shh. Hello beautiful minds, welcome to my channel. I am Saika and today I'd like to share with you my experience about having periods while I was obese. So as a normal functioning woman, I have a thing that's called menstruation that happens every month, supposedly. In today's video, I'd like to share with you guys how my fat and periods relate to each other and how I went about repairing my period cycles through weight loss. We're gonna get close and personal, but I'm here and I'm willing to share it. So without further ado, let's get into it. Just to preface this, I've never been thin my whole entire life. So by the time I got my periods, I was at least chubby. I started bleeding when I was 12 years old and I remember it clearly. So this is TMI, but it happened while we were attending mass. I felt something wet and we were already at the part of the mass where it's by the end where you're getting the communion and stuff. So that was the start of my period. In the first couple of years, my bleeding was pretty consistent. I don't really have like a measure because at that time I didn't really think about my periods monthly. So I can't really say for sure, but I'm pretty sure I remember how annoyed I was that I had to deal with this every month. So let's say I was pretty normal or pretty consistent with my periods by then. I never exhibited period cramps or ovarian related problems. So the women in our family are very lucky. We never had period cramps. I have two sisters, I have lots of aunties, and none of them ever had period cramps. So we're very blessed with that. So by all means, I have no problem in that department. As a teen, I just really didn't like the inconvenience of it, as you do. However, by the time I reached my second or third year in high school, I started noticing that I was skipping. I would skip 2 to 3 months before getting my next bleeding session. And this continued on until college. So from second year of high school up to third year of college, I kept on skipping. But by the time in my junior up to my senior year in college or in university, and just to note, this was also the peak of my weight, I skipped more. At one point, there was a time I would skip at least 6 months before my next cycle. So my periods were that irregular. In terms of what my actual periods look like, they were quite heavy. So I'm a pad girl, but for the longest time, I was an overnight pad girl. So my periods lasted 7 to 9 days. I would have 3 to 4 heavy bleeding days. And I mean, I would change 2 to 3 overnight pads a day. And that's without the pad that I actually wear at night. So I could bleed through a pack and a half of just overnight pads. That's not counting the regular pads or the panty liners. That's not counting all of that. So I was pretty heavy in terms of bleeding. And that's probably because of the skipping. And also because my cycles were irregular, it also contributed to the heaviness of each bleeding session. Knowing now the history of my cycles, let's now go into my mindset and how I dealt with this issue. Personally, I view menstruation as part of what it is to be a woman, and it's also a sign of good health as backed up by science, and especially if you don't have any other complications or you're drinking anything that might frick up your cycle. So you should be normally bleeding every month, so it's a sign of good health. By the time I started skipping in my second or third year of high school, when I started noticing it, I knew something was internally wrong or that it was weight related, but my first instinct was to hide it. I didn't want to tell anyone. I didn't tell my mom, I didn't tell my sisters, no one. I just hid it. It was sort of like a coping mechanism to just hide it. For me at the time, I just wanted to see what would happen if I kept on skipping. And if I still kept on skipping, it'll probably be the time I'll do something about it, but in the meantime, I wanted to keep quiet. However, after some time and it still didn't go back to normal, my mindset sort of shifted into thinking that this probably is my new normal, that it's fine. I still keep on bleeding, although it's skipping like 2 or 3 months at a time. I'm still bleeding, so I think that's fine. That was legit my mindset. I know it's very bad, but yeah, I just thought that, okay, I'm still bleeding, and at least it's 2 to 3 months at a time, so that's less time for me to grieve or to be like super mad or super emotional. So, and again, the inconvenience of having periods would take less. So I was like, there could be pros to this one. Skipping sort of became my new normal, and a lot of the people my age were also having this problem. So I was like, then it's probably normal. I'm probably fine. So I didn't have it checked out. I just dealt with it and took it as something that was just gonna be a part of my everyday life. It was the time that I skipped for 6 months, or I would have my periods biannually, that I knew something was obviously wrong. I absolutely knew it was my weight, but again, because I was in denial, because I didn't want to confront the problem, or because I didn't want to think that there could be another issue, I just kept it hidden. I just put it in the back of my mind. I just said, I'm fine, everything's okay, it's nothing. I said it could be stress, and it could really be stress, because stress could also affect your hormones and the like. But there were also periods of time when I wasn't stressed, but I was still skipping. So stress wasn't really the only factor. It was really more so my weight. But again, total in denial. Instead of confronting the issue, I just resigned myself into thinking that this was the best that I could get and what its implications could be in regards to my health and especially my fertility. I wasn't stupid. I was aware of what bleeding less could mean. And it broke me a bit, because although I really don't want to have children or whatever, but just to not have that option possibly open in the future was quite hard for me. I don't know how to explain it. It also made me feel less of a woman in a way because of that inadequacy. And I'm not saying that, you know, bleeding defines your womanhood, but for me, it was a big part of my identity being a woman. And aside from fertility issues, I just wondered what it could mean to my overall health, because, you know, I didn't want dirty blood to be clogging my ovaries or whatever and the like, and what it meant as well to other areas that could be affected because of what is happening internally. But what could I do was what I thought. I just couldn't fathom how I could resolve the issue, especially because at that time, I wasn't really keen on solving the main issue, which was my weight. Don't get me wrong, I was scared, but I wasn't scared enough to actually start the change. That's why when I started losing the weight, I really hoped and prayed that my periods would go back to normal. It was one of those things that I hoped would be an outcome of me losing the weight and shedding the pounds and the fat. For the most part, I never really knew what having normal cycles was like, so I really wanted it to happen for me, because it also indicated if I'm in the right direction in terms of getting my health back on the line. That's why it made me so happy when I lost the weight. By the time I lost 25 pounds, that's the time I started bleeding monthly. So this was 8 to 9 months after starting my weight loss journey, and until now I still have my monthly cycles. I'm in my early 20s and it's the first time I've ever tracked my periods, and I've never skipped in, I don't know, almost 6 to 7 months. So it's been 6 to 7 months of having my periods every month without being late, being absolutely on time. Even on the stressful days or even on my busiest days, I still had my periods on time. In terms of my actual periods, it would only last for 5 to 7 days, and I only have 2 heavy days, which is like the first and the second day. The rest of the days, it's medium to light, so I don't use overnight pads as frequently anymore. I don't even go through one pack each time I have my periods. So I'm very happy with that development, and now I'm more confident in wearing period panties because I'm trying to be more sustainable. I still can't wear freaking tampon or those diva cups, but we're gonna work towards that. But yeah, I'm more confident because I bleed less heavily than before, so it's more manageable, and overall I'm just happier. Losing the weight really resolved that problem. So now I track my periods. I call it the periodic table. I mean, it is a periodic table, I guess. It's another non-scale victory to me, and it might be super weird, but every time I have a period, I'm always in awe that I'm having my period. It makes me so happy that I'm on time. And I know a lot of women lament when it's the period time or when they're having like, you know, cravings or more moody. I do have that, and although I do understand why we lament having periods, for someone who'd never had regular cycles since I was in high school, it's so fulfilling to finally have that normalcy and also have that as a sign of having better health than before. As a woman, I just really wanted to have a regular cycle that for me was a pillar of my womanhood and a sign of good health. But because of my uncontrollable weight gain, I was never granted that. I skipped and became so irregular, and instead of trying to change that, I just accepted it and what it implied in regards to my health and future possibilities. It was through weight loss that I was able to regain control and put my body back in its normal rhythm that all along it should have been experiencing. It might be a trivial thing to a lot of women or to a lot of people, but having normal cycles now is so relieving and so fulfilling, because for the longest time I've never experienced that, and I just really wanted that for myself. It also further encouraged me to not go back to my old ways, and it made me see the doors I closed in exchange of not shedding the pounds and changing my lifestyle. Up to now, I'm still in awe when I do have my periods. And I work every day to keep it that way. It's just freeing to finally do something for my own betterment rather than the reverse. All our stories are different, and as women, I'd like to think that we are always going to be there for one another, that we understand each other more, and that we're just willing to help and share our stories, to encourage people, and to also say that we all have struggles and we're just trying to get to the other side better, unscathed, and just healthier. That's it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. If you guys like this video, do like, subscribe, and comment how your period has been affected by your weight loss, weight gain, what your period stories are like, and let's start a conversation. Thank you so much, guys, for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Baboosh!